So section 10-4 and 10-6 is the same sections that we looked at yesterday. So if you have a highlighter, you want to highlight this word cylinders, okay? And on yesterday's, you want to highlight the sphere, okay? So that you realize it's the same, but just one has polygon bases, and this one obviously is going to have circular bases. All right, so example number 1. We're going to start by drawing our figure. That should be dashed. And then I'm going to give you some information. So label some parts. So we've got 10 inches over here and 16 inches here. Pretty obvious. What is it? What is it?
A circle. A cylinder.
Cylinder. So the bases are circles, but because it's three-dimensional, it's called a cylinder. Oh, okay.
I completely forgot about it.
Yeah, I did too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so we're going to use the surface area formula, which is pH plus 2b. And because the bases are circles, that means the perimeter, we're going to plug in the circumference formula right there, which is 2 pi r. You should remember the 2 pi r from last chapter, right? Multiply that times the height. Plus 2 times the area of a base. It's the area of a circle, so we're going to say pi r squared. You should recognize that formula from last chapter, right? 2 pi r squared. Those should sound very familiar to you. All right, so we need r, which stands for radius, and we need the h, which is the height, okay? So what's the radius of this base? 8, right? If they give you the diameter, just half it and say 8 inches. And the height is over on the side here because this one's standing up. If it's on the side, it's going to be on the other way. So we're going to plug those numbers in. We're going to have 2 pi, radius is 8, height is 10, plus 2 times pi times 8 squared. Because there's a plus sign right here, we're going to simplify this term first, then this term, okay? And we're going to leave it in terms of pi first. So I'm going to multiply everything but the pi. So I'm going to go 2 times 8 times 10, which is 160, so 160 pi, plus, and then I'm going to do the same thing here, multiply everything except for the pi. So do I multiply first or do the exponent first? Exponent, right? Because the order of operations, you know that whole please excuse my dear Aunt Sally says you're going to do exponents first. So 8 squared is 64. 64 times 2 is 128. So that's 128 pi. If you have 160 pi plus 128 pi, you should add those coefficients together and get 288 pi, which is your pi answer. And then you just want to attach the units. The units for this one are inches, so you're going to say inches what? Squared. All right, for your decimal answer, you're going to plug it into the calculator and you're going to write the wavy equal sign because you're going to be rounding, right? So you're going to type 288 times the pi button, and we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So I've got 904.7, but there's a 7 next to it, so do I stay or round up? So, oops, not 200, 904.8. Also in inches squared. That is your 2 answers. Exact answer, or sometimes they call it the exact answer, sometimes they call it in terms of pi. Okay? Any questions on example number 1? All right. Example number 2. This time I'm going to give you the circumference, which is going to be 24 pi centimeters, and a height of 6 centimeters, and ask you to find the surface area. All right, for the surface area formula for a cylinder, we need the radius and we need the height. So they gave us the height, but we need to get the radius. Okay, so we're going to kind of work backwards, but I'm going to draw a cylinder. And I know the height is 6 centimeters, so I'm going to label that. But I know I'm going to need this radius, right? So I'm just going to kind of write it there and fill it in just a second. But they didn't give us the radius, but they did give us the circumference. The circumference is 24 pi. So I flip my paper, my formula sheet over, and I look on the back and I see that the circumference is equal to 2 pi r. So I'm going to work backwards to get my radius, right? So if it's 24 pi, I set that equal to 2 pi r, and I can see that on both sides I've got pi, so I'm going to divide by pi. Cancel, cancel. That means 24 is equal to 2 times the radius. So what's the radius? 12. So you just divide both sides by 2, and you get a radius of 12. So come up here and fill it in. It's 12 centimeters, right? Now I've got the radius and the height, so now I can use my formula. Surface area formula, pH plus 2b. The perimeter is really the circumference, so I'm going to say 2 pi r times the height. The area of the base is really pi r squared, so 2 pi r squared. And we just are going to plug in for the radius and for the height. So 2 pi 12 6 plus 2 pi 12 squared. All right. So this first term we want to multiply 2 times 12 times 6. I got 144 pi. For the second term, I'm going to square the 12, which is 144, multiply that by 2, so 288 pi. And then I can add those two together. 144 pi plus 288 pi is 432 pi. And this one was measured in centimeters, so we're going to say centimeters squared. Then we're going to get our decimal answer. So we're going to write a wavy equal sign and just take 432, multiply it by the pi button, hit the equal sign, 1,357 point. There's a 1, but there's a 6 next to it, so round up to 2. And there's your 2 answers. All right. Any questions on example number 2 there? All right, let's try some volume. All right, I'll move this up. You'll see it in just a sec. All right, example number 3. We're going to shift gears and look at the volume of a cylinder. And you may have noticed yesterday, but you definitely will notice today, that the formulas for volume are less steps than the surface area. Did you guys notice that? So you kind of spend a little more time getting through surface area, and then boom, 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 quick going through volume. It should be that way. All right. Volume is capital BH, and here's our cylinder over here. Let me move it up. And we've got a diameter of 18 inches, a height of 14 inches. So if the diameter is 18 inches, what's the radius? 9. Okay, that's going to be your R. The height is over on the side here. It's 14 inches. So we're going to plug that in for the pi r squared h formula. So pi times 9 squared times 14. So the first answer, you're going to punch everything in the calculator except for the pi button. So 9 squared. Most of you know that, but if it's like a decimal or a really large number that you don't know, there's a shortcut. You can use the square button, okay? Times the 14, hit the equals 1,134 pi. There's your exact answer. What are the units on this one? Inches, what, cubed, right? Because we're talking volume now, so inches cubed. And then to get the decimal answer, don't hit clear. Leave that answer in there and just hit times, and it'll take your previous answer, the pi button, hit equals, and there's your decimal. 3,562.5, but there's a 6 next to it, so round it up to 6 inches cubed. So there's example number 3. Any questions on 3? All right, one more. Example number 4. Instead of just giving you the height and radius, this time I'm going to ask you to find the volume of a cylinder with a base area of 121 pi centimeters squared and a height that is equal to twice the radius. Okay, so we need 2 pieces of information, right? We need a radius and we need a height. They didn't give us either. Okay, because they didn't give us either, we need to find both of those 2 pieces of information with just what they gave us, just this 121 pi centimeters squared. So let's draw a cylinder. We need our R and we need our H. Okay, but they did give us that the area is 121 pi. Well, if you flip your formula sheet over, you can see that the area formula for a circle is pi r squared. So if it's 121 pi, and we set it equal to pi r squared, we can simplify easily because we see pi on both sides, so divide both sides by pi. So that cancels. So we've got 121 equals the radius squared. So on this one, we do what? Square root, right? The inverse operation of squaring is square root. So we get r equals what? 11. That means the radius is 11. So come up here and fill in 11 centimeters. Okay? Now we just need the height. So we go back to the question, we see that it says, and a height is equal to twice the radius. So what's the height? 22 centimeters. Okay? Because it's twice whatever we got for the radius. All right? Now we got our formula. B equals BH, and we know the area of the base is pi r squared. So we're going to have pi times 11 squared times 22. So with my calculator, I'm going to square the 11, which we already know is 121, but if you want to see it on the calculator, you're just going to use the squaring key just as a little shortcut times the 22. So 2,662. And this is our pi answer. And it was measured in what? Centimeters, so centimeters cubed. Now we need our decimal answer. So again, don't clear it, just leave it in there. Hit times the pi button. We've got 8,362.9, and there's a 1 next to it, so it stays. And there's your 2 answers. Okay. Any questions on example 4? Awesome. All right.